What's up?
Do have we met? Do we
I,
know each
I know.
other?
Do I know you? Hey.
Familiar, ma'am?
And Tracy
Hi.
coming for us already talking about the semester almost over, and here y'all come. Don't do us. Don't do us. Listen. Look, everybody. Hey, everybody coming in. Not welcome back to school night. Okay, so I feel like that's y'all nice way of telling us we need to do better. Okay, we're gonna do better. We're gonna do better, y'all. We're gonna do better. Don't do that. Don't point at me. Hey everybody, welcome to the Teacher
Hey,
Project 2.0. It is so good to see everybody. Welcome. How you doing today, doctor?
I am well. I am quite well.
Y'all, the doctor had me hemmed up all weekend, just so y'all know. He
Did you
was up
not
in,
have a good time?
he
What
was
did
up
you
in my
not
neck
have
of
a
the
good time?
woods. He was up in my neck of the woods,
Did
and
you not have a good time
we did.
with my crazy friend?
Yeah, I finally got listen, I finally got to meet El Teddy's best friend who he talks about all the time. And I was like, he don't exist. He ain't real. Because I ain't never met him. Until I meet you, you're not real. But I met him this weekend and he is cool. And I look forward to hanging out with him without El Teddy because I have his phone number now and I can do that.
No, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works.
I can hang out with him without you being around, sir. And just know that I will. Because he likes me and I like him.
No, let me call him Nah.
So anyway, how's
And
everything
really
going?
be, really be. Y'all know she interrupted me trying to cook some greens to come on here, and I'm committed to coming on. She is the one that is not committed. I am in the middle of cooking my greens.
Wait, hold on. Now I'm not. Don't say I'm not committed. I am committed. I'm just working on my time management right now, but I'm gonna get better. I promise y'all I am. I promise y'all I am. Right. Look out, El Teddy looking right. El Teddy like, no, you will not be hanging out with my best friend without me. But
Uh,
anyway, so this is the season. This is the kickoff to, contrary to popular belief, this is the kickoff into the holiday season. We have Thanksgiving tomorrow. You already said that you are working on your greens, beans, tomatoes, potatoes, and all that good stuff. Um, do you have any particularly favorite Thanksgiving being in a school memory that you could think of? I'm trying to think of a good one myself. Um, I don't know, a faculty
you know
potluck that
those.
you didn't eat anything because you wasn't sure about who have cats and who don't.
See, we didn't believe in the faculty potluck. We knew better. We were like, no faculty, no. We'll put money together. We'll hire a caterer, and we had a very good caterer that would do a good soul food, like good down home soul food at most of my schools. So we were all, but that potluck, I look at how people dress, how people come to school looking, how they, mm-mm. I
you
don't
know,
need you touching my food.
you know, I taught when I first started teaching. I taught at a very urban school, and we actually had a real cafeteria. Like, so the cafeteria workers on Thanksgiving would actually cook a real meal for the kids. And I remember that. I remember us having like real food, for Thanksgiving because they actually cooked and all that good stuff. So
Well, I've been at some schools that have had, all my schools have had real cafeterias. And so I've been privileged enough that when I have gone in there, that's usually the only time I will eat cafeteria food is for the Thanksgiving meal that they
yeah,
do. Because
yeah, that's what I'm
sometimes
saying. I
they'll go
never
in
ate
there
the food.
and they will throw down, and you be like, okay,
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I never really went into the cafeteria, but I do remember on Thanksgiving we would actually like, they would actually like cook.
okay, Xavier, you talking that mess now. You wait till you get to the wrong job and eat a potluck, and you be praying to Jesus on the porcelain throne, dear God above,
You know Xavier ain't eating nobody food.
rethinking life, acting like getting a caterer is bougie. No, it ain't. Not looking at some of
No,
these
sometimes getting a
people.
caterer is needed. It ain't now what type of caterer you get might put you in a bougie, might put you in a bougie, stance. But
No, it was always affordable. Like we never tried to go over like $15 a plate or something.
yeah,
Around that area, you can get you a good,
yeah,
good
yeah, yeah,
meal.
yeah, 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 yeah. So we are here, y'all. Now listen, there's been a lot of things going on. Just to hit a hot button topic real quick. We're not gonna spend a whole lot of time on it. El Teddy's gonna probably go deeper somewhere down the line on his channel. But um you guys know that President Biden has extended the grace for student loans because his student loan forgiveness program is tied up in the courts. Um so if you don't have to pay nothing until June. I mean, that's basically what that boils down to. But El Teddy and I both talked offline. That's going to the Supreme Court. And if I'm being honest, I don't think it's going to go my way. I don't think it's going to go my way. But I told you guys I've applied for that other program that keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully I won't even need to worry about it. But yeah. El Teddy, did you have
Oh,
anything?
I have nothing to add. Like
Okay.
the other side was waiting for it to hit the courts and to hit the circuits because they've lined the courts and circuits with people to do their bidding.
Yeah.
So Biden, he has a formidable foe in the judicial branch of government. So
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, we'll bring you updates when they come through. But honestly, yeah, that's gonna be a minute. Just enjoy the fact that you still don't have that they've added another 6 months that you don't have to worry about paying for your student loans. Just enjoy that, and we'll worry about that. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it in 6 months, right? All right, y'all. Let's get into the. So, where do you want to start this trip around the United States? El Ted, you want to start in Pittsburgh, Virginia, New Hampshire? Where do you want to start this train?
let's get Virginia out of the way.
All right, let us get Virginia out of the way. Let me put the link in the chat. Y'all know Virginia is in my neck of the woods. Now we have spoken on Virginia when Virginia decided that they were going to elect Youngkin. We knew we were in trouble. Okay, we knew we were in trouble. So let's get into what's going on. I'm putting the link in the chat, and then we're going to get into this article. This is coming from the Washington Post. The article that I pulled is dated November the 16th. Virginia is changing the way it teaches history, social studies. Here's how. Over the weekend, the Virginia Department of Education released new standards of learning that, if approved next year, will radically reshape what and how students in the state learn in history and social studies lessons. The revision of the standards of learning, known as SOLs, is typically a little notice procedure that must take place every 7 years by law. But this year's iteration has become controversial, drawing on unusual political limelight after the intervention this summer of Governor Glenn Youngkin's appointees on the Board of Education. Youngkin's 5 appointees assumed a majority in the 9-member board this year. Under their guidance, one of the board's first major actions was to reject a draft version of SOLs that had been in the works for months. So you see here it was a 400-page document, which means people worked a long time on that and they rejected it. Produced in consultation with museums, historians, professors, political scientists, economists, geographers, teachers, parents, and students. So, yes, a very inclusive, all stakeholders included type situation. In August, the timeline for voting on the new standards was delayed from late 2022 to early 2023. The 5 said they wanted more time to review the standards while also raising concerns about typos in the content of the standards. In response, the Department of Education agreed to send the board an updated version of the history and social science standard in mid-November. The version that was published online late Friday by the Education Department totals 52 pages. So we went from 400 pages to 52 pages. It offers a stark contrast in size to the original draft, which numbered 400 pages. The new version is shorter, partly because it no longer offers curriculum frameworks, suggestions for instructional resources, student activities, and lines of classroom inquiry, that were included in the old version of the guidelines. As Education Department spokesperson said, the agency will release a separate curriculum framework document in late summer 2023, and it will undergo a separate board approval process. The framework document may include some of the content present in the old guidelines but deleted from the new version. So let me break down some of this teacher talk. When curriculum is developed, they are they give you the curriculum. They also give you a framework, which includes resources, which includes activities, which includes um, um, support um, documents and things of that nature. By them taking that out of the curriculum, I'm gonna just give an example of why that could be a bad thing. It could be a good thing, but why it could be a bad thing. If you think about the lesson plan that had students picking cotton, when you leave teachers up to their own devices and say, hey, just figure it out, then you're leaving teachers up to their own devices to just figure it out. Now, the good thing is when you have a teacher that's competent, I mean, they can come up with these things. But when you just give teachers a list of standards and say, hey, you create your own lesson plans, you figure it out. Those 400 pages become very important in supporting what that looks like and give you some uniformity throughout the your system. El Tadium, you want to add to that or what happened?
Haven't been involved in boards that do this both on the district and the state level. This is extremely time consuming. Like this
Very, yeah. I've written curriculum
literally
and
takes
it is, yeah,
months,
yeah.
and you have people who have expertise in certain areas that's what they focus on. And even when you do that, you literally take months and months and months and months of doing this. Now, the article is long, but the
It
thing I
is
like about
long.
the article being long is they literally go from K through 12, showing you the similarities in the old and the new
Mhm.
one and the differences. And when I went through some of the differences, there are a lot of stark differences. That one of the they absolutely take out the fact that the Civil War was based on racism. The language now says that quote cultural, economic, and constitutional differences between the North and South, all based in slavery, eventually resulted in the Civil War. I also find it, and they also said that, um, and they you don't have to use the word slavery. You can say that allude to slavery being one of the cultural, economic, and political issues that divided the nation. The other thing that I found that you may find interesting, the history teacher you are, they're eliminating the history of Russia from ninth grade. Because you know a lot of ninth graders around the country do world history. They're eliminating the history of Russia from the curriculum, and I find that very interesting because there are a lot of things that you learn, and I'm sure you know and could speak to when you learn the history of Russia and things like that. I haven't gone through it with a fine tooth comb, but I really wonder, and I'm sure you might look at it like other things like Cold War. What are they going to say about that?
That's
You
actually
know,
you actually took the words right out of my mouth. Go ahead. I'll
and other issues like when we went over there and attacked Iraq and Saddam Hussein. Like, I really want to know how they really trying to not inform students of a lot of things that happen globally in the world, and now there's this anthropomorphic nationalist whitewashing of history standards. It's so interesting, but of course they've taken out women's history. They've taken out. They haven't completely taken out Black history, but it's not a focus at all anymore. Um, Also, another thing that I noticed, it was in I think it was in fifth grade where it says the old guidelines state that an overarching theme of all fifth grade lessons is the period of U.S. history. on this period of U.S. history should be racism, defined as prejudice, discrimination, and antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. The new guidelines do not mention teaching students about racism at all, as if it does not exist. And this is fifth grade. Old guidelines suggest that teachers emphasize the difference between the indigenous people and European concept of land, while the new guidelines do not mention this at all. The new guidelines mention learning about the reasons for Dutch exploration and colonization of North America, while the old guidelines do not mention the Dutch at all. And that's in fifth grade, which then, as you know, you get into middle school and you get a little more directed, and you get more focused in the subject, as you go to different teachers. It's the setting up of eliminating and obviating whole groups of people, whole chunks of history, and there's just it becomes fiction almost. It's almost like it's fiction, almost at this point. I don't know. I'll let you go because this is your bread and butter right here. This is all history.
Well, I mean, what's frustrating as I read through this, because again, for example, same thing I was just reading through. So I'm looking at sixth grade, where similarity says both sets of guidelines say sixth graders should learn American history from the end of the Civil War through World War One and World War Two into contemporary society. But then the difference is old guidelines list and define racism as an important theme, while the new guidelines do not mention racism. How do you how do you get around racism if you're talking about World War One, World War Two? It says the old guidelines state that students should ponder how discrimination and segregation continued in the United States after Reconstruction. They talk about the Chinese Exclusion Act, um, but then they're forbade, which a lot of people may not know what the Chinese Exclusion Act is. It basically is just that it excludes Chinese people from coming into the United States. Um, but then it doesn't want teachers to teach on. The new guidelines do not mention the Chinese Exclusion Act, nor do they propose students ponder the lingering effects of racism. I don't know how you teach about Ellis Island if you don't start with the Chinese Exclusion Act. I don't. It goes on to talk about the same thing with the Holocaust, and this is interesting. You guys have to pay attention to this. The old guidelines call for examining America's response to the Holocaust, while the new guidelines suggest exploring the consequences of the Holocaust. So when you talk about the difference between examining America's response to the Holocaust, because again, we have to be fair and say, hey, America screwed it up. A lot of countries did, but America screwed it up. They didn't respond the way they should have responded when we knew what was going on with Hitler, right? But now when you say, oh, we want to deal with the consequences of the Holocaust, well, if I'm teaching American history, that almost reduces it to rubble. So again, it's very important when we look at this, because as like you said, this is my bread and butter. As a social studies teacher, I'm listening and I understand what this means. There's no way in the world that you can teach about the Cold War and not teach about the Russian Revolution. It just doesn't. It makes no sense. How do you do it?
At this point, and maybe somebody says that I'm being extreme or hyperbolic when I say this, but this country has debased itself to the point where the Third Reich was in Europe, where you're throwing away books, banning books, obviating whole chunks of history to make it more, make your side seem like like it's more favorable. Like, where are we going next? We're going to begin throwing music and art and stuff like that in the bonfire or something like that. Like, where does it end? Because we're already at the point where you don't want reading books about people's culture. You don't want that at all. Now you're rewriting history, or if I maybe I don't say rewriting, you're leaving out parts of history so that you seem more favorable. How are we not careening to the path that the Third Reich was in, when we were in Europe during the World War II.
I don't get it. I don't know. I mean, at this point, what do you want me to teach? I mean, what do you want me to teach? So, what you guys have to pay attention. First of all, it should be alarming to anybody that a document went from 400 pages to 52 pages. Like that, I don't care what it is. If you have a document and it started off at 400 pages and after somebody edited it, it went down to 52 pages, you have to be concerned. You have to be concerned. And they say, oh, we're going to add that part later. Well, we're going to do that as a separate process of approval. Yeah, no. Mm-mm. Nah, we in trouble, y'all. We in trouble.
Yep.
We in trouble. So that's what's going on in Virginia. Yeah. You ready to head on to another state?
Let's get there.
Where we going next, honey? Where we going next?
I think we said we were not going to do New Hampshire, huh? Let's do Pittsburgh then.
All right, let's talk
Let's
about
chase
Pittsburgh.
that with some good news at least.
All right. Putting the link in the chat for the article for the Pittsburgh. And the articles are also in the description box. But for the people who are with us live, I'll let you guys, see I'll drop the link so
Did
you
you put
guys
the
can.
first article in there? Yeah, you did. I
I
see.
did. I did.
I see it.
Okay. Let's get into this. This is coming from the Pittsburgh Post Cadet. It is dated November the 23rd, 2022. Pittsburgh Public School Board opposes state bills curtailing classroom lessons on race and gender. The board's resolution says the state bill seeks to place fear in teachers and are harmful to LGBTQ individuals and people of color. The Pittsburgh Public School Board unanimously approved a resolution taking a stance against state legislation that the board says is harmful to LGBTQ students and students of color. The resolution, introduced by board member Devin Telefero, opposes four bills that would threaten the ability of the school district of Pittsburgh to build a culture of belonging that embraces differences, reflects our local community, and allows all students and educators to be their authentic selves. The board resolution says the state bills seek to place fear in teachers and are harmful to LGBTQ individuals and people of color. Pittsburgh is the first district in Pennsylvania to draft a resolution opposing those state bills, but Miss Telefero said she hoped other districts would follow. Before the board vote Tuesday, she said she believes most people want every child to have access to a high, age-appropriate education. See, you gotta look, y'all gotta listen to those buzzwords: age-appropriate education. Students deserve to accurately learn about our history, read books that represent their heritage or culture, and discover who they are and how they identify. Most importantly, they deserve leaders who will stand up for their rights and make decisions on their behalf that will contribute to their academic and personal system. But she said the politicians should not use children for cultural wars and political games. Facts on facts on facts. Sadly, the politicians in Pennsylvania have been pushing legislation meant to ban books, erase LGBTQIA plus students, and censor classroom curriculum to fit their own political views. One of the state proposals, House Bill 1532, is known as the Teaching Racial and Universal Equity Act, true, and is aimed at curtailing educators from teaching about critical race theory. Oh, God. The school board's resolution says that this bill prohibits our educators from accurately teaching history, improperly bans anti-bias training, and would make culturally relevant teaching nearly impossible. The resolution also said that the House Bills 1277 and 1278, known as the Parental Control of Sexually Explicit Content and Empowering Families in Education Act bills, compromise thorough fact-based health education and further devalues our students and families of color and LGBTQIA plus students and families. House Bill 2813, known as the Parental Rights of Education, prohibits classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity in kindergarten through fifth grade. The school board's resolution says the bill intends to censor, marginalize, exclude, and discriminate against LGBTQIA plus students and families. And several other board members spoke against the state legislation, called the resolution absolute. Bill Gallagher, excuse me, Director Bill Gallagher called the resolution absolutely necessary. I'm almost done, y'all. This has just this excuse me, that is just absolutely shameful that in the year 2022 that we are looking at such hatred against children and just people in general. Director Sylvia Wilson said we should be so much further along than this. The board's vote came a day after several parents, teachers, and community members spoke in support of the board's proposal. The bills, all introduced by Republicans, are currently in the State House and Senate Education Committees. Democrat Governor elect Josh Shapiro has veto power if the bills land on his desk. Governor Tom Wolf has promised to veto at least two of the proposals if they had reached him. The proposal of the bills comes amid a wave of anti-LGBTQ legislation filed this year in states across the country. The NBC News reported in March that the annual number of anti-LGBTQ bills rose from 41 in 2018 to 238 in less than 3-month time period in 2022. It went from 41 to 238. In 2021, 191 anti-LGBTQ bills were filed, according to MSNBC News.
So in all of 2018, only 41. In only 3 months of this year, 238.
Yipper skipper.
That's why I've been screaming that there is an all out assault on not just LGBTQ people, but especially LGBTQ youth. An all out assault. And the thing about it is, I know there are other minorities and marginalized group that has the whole well, it ain't my problem situation. But like I keep saying, what they do to one, they will do to all of the marginalized groups. If they're coming for one, they're coming for all of them.
Yeah.
I'm happy that the that Pittsburgh and their school board decided to do this. What alarms me is the outgoing um, governor said, "Well, I'll veto two of them, but I guess I'll let the other two slide in." And we haven't heard anything from the governor elect, both of whom
No,
are Democrats.
the governor elect said he would veto it.
No, the sitting governor Tom Wolf has promised to veto two of the
Well,
four.
okay, I misunderstood. Well, what does it say above that about the governor elect?
It
Read it.
says Democratic Governor elect Josh Shapiro has veto power.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. My
Yeah,
bad,
he
my
has
bad.
veto power if the
All right,
bill lands
no problem.
on his desk.
Got it.
And so my thing is this: I want to know where were you all? And I don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback, but where were they during this election cycle when they could have asked the governor elect, "Hey, the school board could have asked him, point blank, where are you on these issues?" The unions in Pennsylvania could have asked, "Where are you on these issues surrounding education?" If you remember, a couple years ago we did our article on Pennsylvania. Remember, their current governor and the union was having a whole situation, and the union was telling their people in Pennsylvania not to go to work. We did that here on this platform where the union and the governor had a whole situation, and the union was telling people, yeah, don't go to work,
Oh
don't worry
yeah,
about it.
I do remember that. Yeah.
And now that governor is going out, I feel like the union leaders in Pennsylvania should have been on top of this and said, "Hey, this is coming down the pipeline. Where are you
Well,
on this?"
we don't know that wasn't happening. We don't know
What?
that
You're
didn't
right.
happen.
You're right.
I mean,
You're
it's
right.
not in the article, but like you said, during the election cycle, we don't
They
know.
may have. I
Yeah.
probably would have wanted to commit him to saying out loud, "No, if it comes across my desk, I'll veto it." Now we know some politicians don't want to do that because
Right.
they feel like, but the election is over now. Election is absolutely over. You
Yeah.
won. Where are
Yeah.
you on?
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. Like I do. I agree with you 100%. And I'm just frustrated that I'm frustrated because like you said, you are standing on the rooftops yelling, and like I need people to pay attention to what we're seeing and understand the I know this doesn't deal with education, but when we see the attacks on places like Club Q and that club in New York where it has been attacked, what was it, 5 times?
Yeah, like 4 or 5 times in one
Yeah, I
week.
mean, and it's the cat call, it's the battle cry, it's I think people don't understand the subtleness of what we see that's going on across the country that is basically opening up um the floodgates on attacking members of the LGBTQIA community. When you say you
And I
went from
think, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say when you say you went from 48, pieces of legislation to 200, over 200, and you went. It took a whole year for 48 pieces of legislation, 3 months for 200. Like you've got to see this. Go ahead. That's all. Go ahead.
There are certain parallels and between certain things. People hate when I make this parallel, but there are certain parallels in with us as Black people. A lot of people say during the 90s we let our guard down and thought that America was in a good place or getting in a much better place with regard to race and race relations, especially when we were around 2008, 2010, when Obama first got in there. And now it took Cheeto Man to come in afterwards and really expose and pull the curtain back and say, no, it's actually way worse than you thought it actually was, because we just, were asleep at the wheel. The same thing with LGBTQ issues. A lot of Generation Zers don't know what it was like. I remember being in high school where you were afraid to be gay bashed.
Mhm.
Like that was a real thing where you were afraid for your
Yeah.
physical safety just walking down the street and being who you were. And there were no hate crimes against that. There were no, like, literally, it was hard to even get an assault charge for these things, especially during the days when it was illegal to be gay in this country. That's not even 50 years ago in a lot of places. So what I'm saying is there I think people got lulled into another false sense of security thinking, oh, we got Burgerfell, so same-sex marriage is legal, and America is in a good place, and these laws that are sweeping this country is showing you no, we're not. It's actually reverting back to what it used to be. And it's a scary time period. And if
We're
we don't,
definitely the car is definitely in reverse in this country right now. The car is definitely in reverse. Yeah. So that's what's going on up in Pittsburgh. And this is what I need people to understand. I think people a lot of times they hear Pittsburgh, they think Pennsylvania, you think Philadelphia. No, 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 no. Pittsburgh is red. Pittsburgh is Trump country. Please let me be clear. You thinking, when you thinking liberal, no, you're thinking about Philadelphia and other parts of the state. Go back to your political maps. I remember even going back to the presidential election. Remember, Pennsylvania was one of those states that we were on the edge of our seat about. It came down to the counties. It came down, you know,
I will say Pittsburgh County this last election cycle did better. 2020 and 2022, they did better in terms of
yeah, they did
being
better.
more
But what I'm
blue
saying it is
than they
still,
did.
it's
But you're
still,
right.
it's not very
Hmm.
liberal. Like I mean, when I drive up there to visit mother, I mean literally on the street where he lives, if you go left, you saw Biden signs. If you go right, you saw Trump signs. And as I was driving up, once I got past like a certain part on my ride, it's huge Trump billboards
Hmm.
and signs. And so I don't want people to get Pittsburgh confused with Philadelphia because it's not the same politically, you know. Um, do we want to? Where do we want to go next? Do we want to talk about the Union or do we want to talk about New Hampshire? No, we said we would do New Hampshire another time, right?
Yeah, we're doing the elementary kids.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know
Let me
what?
go ahead and spike out now since I'm already
I
spiking out.
think. Hold on. Hold on. Let me send that one. I don't know if I sent it to myself. Hold on. I'm sorry, y'all. Well,
You
spike
mean
out
to
LJ
send,
while I'm
you need
sending
me
it
to
to
send it
myself.
send it to you?
No, I'm sending it to myself now, but spike out while you're. So, okay, let's get into it. I'm emailing it to myself now. Sorry about that, you guys. I don't know why I didn't get that one. But it's coming to me now. Um, so the article is called "Handcuffs in Hallways: Hundreds of Elementary Students Arrested at U.S. Schools." Wait a minute, it didn't come through. Let me do it again. And the reason why, because this has like a little video to it, I was gonna pull it up.
Oh, okay.
But I'll start reading the article and then I'll don't make a wrong move, the officer said as he pinned the struggling subject to the ground, period. The officer tightened the handcuffs around the subject's thin wrist. Ow, 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 it really hurts, the subject exclaimed. The officer pressed his weight onto the subject's small body while school staff watched it all unfold. The person he was restraining was 7 years old. If you, my friend, are not acquainted with the juvenile justice system, you will be very shortly, the officer told the child. Earlier that day, the child allegedly spit at a teacher. Now he was in handcuffs, and the police officer was saying he could end up in jail. That child, a second grader with autism at a North Carolina school, was ultimately pinned to the floor for 38 minutes, according to a body camera video of this incident. At one point, court records say the officer put his knee in the child's back. CBS is not identifying a North Carolina child to protect his privacy. Similar scenes have played out in viral incidents, police officers arresting young children, often violently. In 2018, a 10-year-old with autism was pinned face down and cuffed in Denton, Texas. Another boy with autism, just 11 years old, was handcuffed and dragged out of school and forced into a sheriff deputy's car in Colorado in 2021. At the same year, officer handcuffed and screamed a 5-year-old who had wandered away from school. There were many more cases of young children arrested in school, cases that don't make headlines. More than 700 children were arrested in U.S. elementary schools during the 2017-2018 school year alone, according to CBS News analysis. Experts tell CBS News the fact that young children are arrested at all is troubling. Ron Applin, chief of police for Atlanta Public Schools, said they've never arrested an elementary school child in his 6 years of running the department. I've never seen a situation or a circumstance in my 6 years where an elementary school student had to be arrested. We've never done it. I don't see where it could happen. I don't see where it would happen. But it does happen elsewhere, and to some kids more than others. Children with documented disabilities are 4 times more likely to be arrested at school, according to CBS News analysis of the 2017-2018 Department of Education or Education Department data. Um, the article goes on again to give you the data. I believe there's a lot of misunderstanding with children who are struggling, that they believe that in general the behavior indicates intention. And when you're dealing with a child who is going through a difficult time, any child, that is not the case. Anyone working with children with disabilities must understand how to respond when a child with an emotional or behavioral disorder acts out. Um, in a crisis, children need someone to be there to help the kids start to de escalate and help soothe. Black students are even more disproportionately affected. They make up nearly half of all arrests at elementary schools, according to the data, but they accounted for just 15% of the school population at those schools. Um, in a 2020 study, Kupchik and his colleagues analyzed interviews with 73 school resource officers or SROs. Nearly all of the officers interviewed said that their primary mission was to keep the school safe. The difference, Kupchik said, was those whose officers felt they needed to protect the school from. The SROs who worked with low income students and students of color defined the threat as students themselves, whereas the SROs who work in wealthier, whiter schools define the threat as something external that can happen to the children, as an external threat for the more privileged kids, as opposed to students in schools with more students of color, low income students. They're seen as the threats themselves. Um, Police handling school discipline, not school staff. Girardi said she couldn't understand why her son was handcuffed face down on the floor. She said school staff called saying her son was having a hard time that day. She later got a text asking her to come pick him up. When she when she arrived shocked what she saw when she arrived shocked her. At that point, I had no idea why he was being handcuffed. I couldn't fathom in my mind what could possibly have occurred to make handcuffing a 7-year-old face down on the floor necessary. She said the school staff knew her son had been struggling. He was in a treatment program where he received special support. He had an IEP on file which documented his needs. Yet when teachers disciplined her son for repeatedly tapping his pencil, something she said he does out of anxiety, the situation escalated. He spit on the teacher and the police officer was called. The boy ended up in handcuffs. It goes on to talk more about that. It's a long article, you guys. That's why I'm kind of going through. I'll tell you I'm going to scroll through, but go ahead. Oh, let me read this last part and then I'll stop. Training needed, because this is what I was going to talk about. And SRO's training can be critical, according to Applin. He helped change the way Atlanta SROs interact with children. After being in the top 10 nationally in elementary arrest rates, Georgia changed its approach in 2018. They changed their SROs to focus on helping students to reach graduation rather than making arrests. Part of the new SRO training involved making a switch from being a warrior to a guardian. One of the things that's stressed to my officers is that we're student focused. The whole idea behind why we're here is to create an environment where students can learn, teachers can teach. We're not here to criminalize our students. Virginia has taken a different approach. Schools there arrested kids in elementary school at 5 times the rate for the U.S. overall during the 2017-2018 school year, according to the data. In that list of criminal offenses, there are very serious things. It's not bullying, it's malicious wounding, it's kidnapping, it's threats to harm staff. There are serious crimes, bomb threats, drugs. Data from the Virginia Department of Education shows that during the 2020-21 school year, there were 24 bomb or other threats reported. There were nearly 700 reported threats to either students or staff. The data doesn't contain any references to malicious wounding or kidnapping. The most common offense in the data is interference with school operations, which made up nearly 40% of the 14,000 incidents recorded in the data. Child. It goes on to talk about our SROs needed in schools. Does it make schools safer? But I'm gonna stop there. El Teddy, what do you want to interject, sir?
This is such a multifaceted, multi-level issue and problem. Especially because this article focuses a lot on elementary. We ain't even got to middle school and high school. We're just talking elementary. And so if we're going to focus our attention on elementary, it's so telling that they mention at the white schools, oh, we're here to protect the students from outside entities and people that may try running the school. Whereas at the black schools, mm-mm, we try to protect people from these bad behind kids in there, which is a problem. And you and I both really we've taught at some of the schools that people would consider bad schools or some of the worst. And we've taught students with autism, students who have behavior problems. And the one thing that I tell people is, because they would always ask me, how do you deal with so and so? Because you have to learn that individual student, and you may not be able to treat them like you can someone else. Like a problem with the student who likes to tap his pencil, I might do something like this. Hey, baby, let me tell you, let me help you out. You see this here? Let me give you. I had a student like that, and I gave him this little. I had bought like a thing a pin cushion. I bought him a pin cushion because it just, and I said, there you go, tap away on this pin cushion, tap 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 away, because the pin cushion would muffle the sound. You could still hear it a little bit, but it wasn't as bad as on this wooden desk. Or if I got a student that with autism that's acting out, I knew there was one adult in the building that they were cool with, that they could get along with. In a lot of cases, it wasn't a teacher. It might have been a security guard, uh, support staff, clerical staff, or even if the SROs were there long enough, it might be one of them where they could take that student and say, "Hey, come talk to me. Let's walk and talk." That was my. I would do this. Let's walk and talk to let them cool off. Let the teacher cool off. Let you cool off. Baby, they'll see you tomorrow. Because today is not the day to have them go back. And tomorrow is a whole nother day. But when you deal with students, you cannot handle, my point is, you can't handle them the same way you can an adult. Well, technically, you can. And the problem is, y'all want to handle adults wrong, so you want to handle kids wrong. Because even how y'all handle adults without mental issues, but especially adults with mental issues as well, is completely wrong. The whole way that policing is taught is wrong because policing is based on race. Period. Full stop. It's all based on race because we see y'all know what to do and you know how to do the right type of policing when it's white people, but when it's black people or any other type of people of color, you go to a whole nother set of protocols and rules that you have. So the problem is that policing is so based on race that I don't know how we get around it. The other part that it makes this issue hard is most school districts don't have the funding to have enough SROs to have a dedicated SRO at every elementary school. I know in my all of the districts that I've worked in, they'll have an SRO at the high school, and then the feeder pattern schools or the middle schools that feed into it, and the elementary schools that feed into that high school would have to call the high school, and that SRO would then drive over to that elementary or middle school in which was usually in the area and take care of the issue. So they didn't have dedicated SROs, especially once you get down to the elementary school level. So then you have people running in there who have no relationship with those kids. They don't know, they don't have any training, any education on how to deal with certain types of kids that are on the spectrum with autism or kids who have whatever mental needs that they have. They don't have training on that. They haven't been trained to do. They don't know this student. They don't know. Okay, he might need to just walk it off. They may not even be aware of some of the physical ailments that that child may have because you having your knee in the back of a child that's like less than 10 years old for 38 minutes could cause physical damage to that child. And there's so many things, but they're trying to police children like they police grown people, and they get that wrong. I don't know, really, B. I feel myself spiking out. I'm sorry. Another thing that was alarming to me when they talked about Virginia, you notice that ain't the Youngkin Virginia. That's the Virginia from the previous governor who was allegedly Democratic and was supposed to be more amenable to these types of issues. But I'm gonna stay quiet. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So what I was gonna say is this goes back to what I've been saying since we started this podcast. Our education system is broken. This is a systemic failure. And what I mean by that is this. Most cases we're talking about students with disabilities. So that goes back to IDEA, that goes back to having the proper training for teachers, the proper training for SROs. That goes back to having the proper number of mental health um, educators in the building. That means you have enough counselors and school psychologists. And that means that the students are getting all of their counseling that they're supposed to get via their IEP. That means that teachers are in the proper classrooms and they have proper co-teachers and the proper supports. The problem is, I would venture to guess, and this comes from experience. This comes from experience. I would venture to guess that probably over 90% of the school district in the districts in the United States of America are not in full compliance with IDEA. So what does that mean? That means that a teacher, although with the best of intentions, may not be properly trained to deal with a child with autism. That means that a teacher, although with the best of intentions, may not understand what that looks like, may not understand how to do it, how to de-escalate, and they don't have the proper supports in place for that child. That means that a IEP could be the best written IEP in the world, but if you are at a school that doesn't have the proper supports to implement that IEP, then when your child goes into crisis, there is no one there that knows what to do. That one example started with a child tapping their pencil on a desk, which escalated. Nobody knew how to de-escalate, and then the child spit on the teacher. Which, listen, I think all of us can agree that's probably one of the worst things you can ever do is spit on somebody. However, when you know you're dealing with a person, not just a child, but with a person with a disability, you have to know that you don't deal with it the same way. And what happens is now we have these police officers, because let's be clear, SRO is a fancy word for a police officer. These are, at least in the districts where I work, these
All
are
of the ones I work into, they are actual
these are police
licensed.
officers.
These are
They have been
licensed police
trained.
officers. That's
Right.
right.
They have been trained to be police officers. And
Hmm.
we know, we've seen it happen. We've seen all of the examples in the news that these police officers don't know how to deal with grown adults with autism. And we've unfortunately have seen grown adults not walk away from a police encounter with autism. They're not trained and they don't know. Now, I think common sense dictates that you don't put handcuffs on a 7-year-old. However, and they'll tell you, you can speak like I can speak to it. Baby, I done seen some 7-year-olds that can tear it up. I'm not defending, but what I'm saying is when you don't have the training and you don't know what to do, and all you've been taught is for a police officer, de-escalation is control. Meaning I need to control the situation, which means if I got to put this little boy in handcuffs, and I'm gonna put him in handcuffs, versus in a school, de-escalation means something totally different. But that's what happens when you throw these ideas against the wall and you don't fully implement them with the support, and you don't come back and you don't constantly update and adjust. That is what it boils down to. And like, well, not boils down to, but that's one of the elements. And the other thing, like you said, El Teddy, I agree 100% as well. When there's a different mindset that someone walks in the door with going into a rural rich school versus a inner city poor school. It's just a different mindset. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, it is a different mindset and it is a different bias. And so there are a lot of elements to this. There are a lot of reasons why we see what we see. But for me, my frustration comes in the fact that we're not giving the proper training. And then we expect people to do right that's like you expected somebody to be able to throw up a touchdown, but they've never come to practice. Well, what are they implementing? They don't know the playbook. They don't understand the signals. They don't understand the calls. They don't know their teammates.
This is a direct reflection on, like you said, how flawed two major entities in this country are: law enforcement and education. Both entities are broken. Both entities are currently getting it wrong. And we don't know that they're on the road to ever trying to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the long and short of it.
Yeah. Janae says, your thoughts on first aid mental health training in schools. She says, I think it's inadequate. I'm not quite sure what you mean. You say first aid mental health. I'm not sure what you mean by first aid mental health training. El Teddy, help me out. I don't know what that means.
I'm gonna just say the
I mean,
mental
I think
health.
I know what it means, but I want to be
Yeah,
sure.
I'm just gonna say the mental health part. Well, and that's just what really be just spoke to the fact that there isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that no one's trained, but um, people who have training in special education, they get a lot more training than now. Teachers do have to go through. professional development and education with for teaching special ed students, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
get as much
Yeah, it's
as
very basic though.
someone who has a degree
Mm-hmm.
or a certification in special education. And so, which is why in a lot of cases, depending on how many students with special needs you have, they're supposed to put a second teacher in that room who is certified and who does have that type of training. In most districts, IDEA dictates after you get over a certain number of students that have special needs, there has to be someone who has that training to in order to make sure that all of those students are getting the services and accommodations that are needed. Um, it's really we could really I think we've done some special ed stuff, but it's so much
Yeah, we have,
involved
and we
with
could
it.
definitely do more.
Um, but I
Um,
think in instances that we're talking about, the biggest thing is knowing how to truly de-escalate, and law enforcement just doesn't know how to do that.
they don't. Janae said it's a program for 12 hours at the collegiate level, sponsored by NAMI. Yeah, I'm not familiar with this, so I don't have an opinion, but it probably. You said you think it's inadequate. I'm gonna agree with you. I just based
Yeah,
on what I
yeah, pretty
know,
much.
just based on what I know about education, I'm agree with you. Stig's girl says it is almost impossible to be in compliance when you do not have sufficient students teacher ratios. Facts on fact, and that's
Oh
what I'm
yeah,
saying.
that's the
That's the point I'm making.
that's
Like,
what we're all saying.
yeah,
There's just not
I've
enough.
never worked in the school system. Never worked in the school system. Even when we had an abundance of teachers, we never were fully staffed when it comes to the mental health side of it. They never had the right number of school psychologists and social workers and all that. They never it just never was. And then I know, especially on the elementary and middle school level, they want to use the counselors and psychologists in other areas instead of what they're there to do.
Hmm.
You want them to do lunch duty. You want them to do this and do that. No, that's not their job. That is not what they're there for. Um, Another issue is that you have special education students in the wrong placement. We have to go through all of the documentation and red tape to put students in the appropriate educational settings. Facts. Some students enter our schools with clear behavioral needs, which cannot be met in general education and your resource classes, yet they require us to start with the least restrictive environment. Well, that's the law. That's the law. That's the language in IDEA.
They have to try to
They
put
have to.
them
Because
unless
what ends
it's
up happening
already
is,
clinically diagnosed that they have
yeah,
whatever exceptionalities or
yeah,
mental or special needs, I should say. They have to start them in general ed classes, which sometimes is disruptive to the general ed class. I'm not, I
absolutely,
understand that
absolutely, it
totally.
is.
Understand totally. And so you do sometimes end up with situations where these kids are in this class and they should not be in this class.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the least restrictive environment, and the other problem is, again, it goes back to resources, things, girl. Because listen, I'm with you, baby, but it goes back to resources. As someone who's I was an advocate, so I've been on both sides of this coin. The
Hold
problem
on one
is,
second, Ruby. I'll be right back.
okay, the problem is schools. A lot of times, schools don't want to put students in other settings because that's money that they don't have. That's resources that they have to provide and all of that. It again, it comes a lot of it comes down to resources and money. So I agree with you 100%. Been there and done that. I've been on both sides of that coin. Um, and it is frustrating. Like I said, a lot of this just comes down to the schools not adequately being financially supported, but also getting the right training and supports in place to support our students with special needs. Um, and it is frustrating. And like I said, been on both sides of it. Um, we did have one more story to get into. I'll see if El Teddy wants to touch it. We're at an hour. We don't like to keep y'all. We like to do an hour and keep it to an hour. But we did have one more story. I'll see if El Teddy wants to maybe hold off on that for next week. Do you want to? We're at an hour. Do you want to touch the Randy Weingarten, or do you want to push it to next week?
Up to you. I can do it either way. I just had to go check on my pot liquor. It's looking
Lord,
good.
He had to go check on his grain.
I got some more time on that pot liquor. So, but it's looking good. But no, we can save it for the next week,
Yeah,
or we
we'll
can do
say
it this
because we'll be here next week. Okay. Yes, the issue here is these children need help. not the average elementary campus cannot give them. I had a student last year that eventually and unfortunately had to get the CRO off. And don't get me wrong, there are times when it's needed. Let's be clear. I just think
Hmm.
that the numbers are disproportionate. I've been in situations where, listen, sometimes you have to, you need it.
Hmm.
Um,
But even
but
in how they
again,
handle it, my thing is, I'm not, because I absolutely know, because we're talking about elementary. We haven't even gotten to middle school and high school where you have some real physical issues that
yeah,
that require maybe an SRO. But even then, still, how you approach and deal with those situations is important. I remember oftentimes I would be dealing with students that were much bigger than me, and in dealing with students that were much bigger than me, I had to go into that situation where, yeah, let me, work on de-escalation because I still got a class to teach. I still got a class to teach. I might be in this classroom by myself. Um, I still got these other 30, 40 kids that got to be taught. And now I got to focus all my attention on this one student. Yeah, let me find some convenient and just really, some people will call them weird, but I call them some savvy ways of de-escalating and working through situations um, that you have to work through. Like you had to be very creative in how you worked it out. And like I said, we all had that one teacher that if we had a situation, go to so and so. Now, I was usually that teacher. That like I was usually a lot of times that teacher that students would get sent to. Go to Dr. L. Go to his class. I'm calling him right now. I tell him you on the way. And so because they knew I knew how to kind of I had convenient ways. Even some of my autism kids, like the boy who would tap the pencil, some of those kids that get on my nerve. I had old encyclopedias. I would tear a page out the old encyclopedia. Maybe I need you to fill in all of the A's, the O's, the P's, the B's, the D's, all of those ones that got a circle to fill in. Fill all that in. When you're done, come on over here. Let me see that. Yeah. Something to get them out because some of those kids, I'm not saying I worked all the time, but you have those kids that have like ADHD and things, and they need something to occupy them. And the baby, they would sit there so silent, filling in them circles, because they just needed something to take their mind off, just to so they could calm down, ease their mind. Sometimes they just want to vent and get it out. Sometimes I say, "Oh, all right, well, let's go on over here, walk on over here to the field, go on over here, cuss, kick, scream, whatever you need to do. Okay, you done? All right, we good. All right, let me go buy you. You need a soda, piece of candy, something to calm you down. All right, well, come on over here. We're gonna make it do what it do. You got to do these kinds of things. You have to. I don't know what's going on with Really B, but I don't know what's going on. But she has me spotlighted. Um, but like I said, we really, really, really have to invest more money in just law enforcement period. Because hell, there's not enough money invested in the police that we have, you know, beating the street every day, much less the SROs that we have in the school system. So yeah. Any more questions, comments, concerns, rude remarks? As I often ask in my classroom, because y'all have been very engaged today, and we like engagement. Um, I have no idea what is happening. I don't know where really be went. I have no idea what's happening. Um, I have no idea what's happening. But we here. There she is.
hey, I'm on my phone. Something I don't know what happened. I lost connection or something. I apologize, you guys. right here at the end. I don't know what's going on. So I figure I'll just come in and end it out, and then I'll just figure out what's going on with my connection, chat. My internet is still working, but I don't know. It's saying I lost connection and it won't. And my mic won't work. I don't know. It's giving me problems, but I'm gonna figure it out. So El Teddy, you're going live on your channel at what time?
I'm gonna say 5 o'clock,
Okay.
maybe 4:45. I might be able to do earlier, but I gotta I
Get
gotta go wash these
get
greens
the
and
greens
then
together, child.
get them started on their process of So that might take 45 minutes to get them going because I still gotta get some other stuff prepared before I put the greens in there and stuff and get my ham hocks, right and stuff like that. So
Okay. All right, y'all. Well, I'll be live after El Teddy's done, and we will talk about some things of the things, honey.
okay.
All right. All right, we about to be out. I'll talk to y'all later.
Bye
Peace.
y'all.